Okay. So we were discussing Israel. We've been discussing Israel every week since October 7th, starting from that first day, that first Monday night. We were discussing Israel. We've been doing it ever since because we can't lose focus. And what we're saying, what we're thinking, what we're talking, this is creating a spiritual reality. This is very important. When we share the miracles and we get inspired, that creates something. When we think of the love we have for each other, that's a force. I'm going to share 2 stories called the miracle stories, but I'm calling them miracles created by man stories. Our participation in the miracles. Of course, God doesn't need our help, and God can and does freely shower us with his limitless kindness. But there's also something special when we're participants. When we do something, Kabbalistically, that's called the arousal from below. Kabbalistically, it's explained that an arousal from below initiates a response called Kabbalistically an arousal from above. So when we reach out to God, this puts something in motion that God can then respond to us, and sometimes that's what we call a miracle. Now, usually when we think of our reaching out to God, it's in a very pointed way. For myself, or for someone I love, for someone I know, for someone in trouble, I'm going to do A, B, C, X, Y, Z. And that's my initiation from below, my reaching out to God, allowing him, enabling him to respond and create what we're looking for, going beyond the rules, changing the decrees, drawing down bounty. But sometimes, like in the 2 vignettes I'm going to share, it's not that the people were specifically turning to God asking for something. They didn't know. But still, what we do opens the door for God's response, even when we're not doing it thinking, I need this, I'm asking for this. We're just doing it. But our service of God always can be that arousal from below that triggers an arousal from above. So we'll share 2 stories that happened in Israel, and maybe we can think of our own situations that were similar. Miracles we create consciously or unconsciously. So the first is from October 7th. There was a Talmudic school, a yeshiva, on October 7th in one of the cities that was very grievously attacked, where everywhere in the city was attacked. And somehow this one school was untouched. They were in it, they were praying, they were celebrating the holiday. Obviously, over the day, the news trickled in. They just stayed where they were, and somehow, until the all clear was given, they were okay. The terrorists never attacked. And that was so strange because this is a large gathering of men. I mean, obviously, this is a prime place that the terrorists would attack, as they did. So what happened? So when they studied the footage from the security cameras, they saw that terrorists did come to their place, to this Talmudic academy, this yeshiva. And the terrorists were there, and they see the terrorists are just like, so to speak, waiting outside for quite a while, and then they leave. And they never attacked. They never came back. Piecing together the timing of the footage, they realized, hand of God, the terrorists came exactly when all the students were in the middle of the Amidah, the Shemona Esrei prayer. The highlight of the service, the most holy part of our service, is when we stand very quietly praying to God. Now, these terrorists knew this was a Talmudic academy. They knew it was yeshiva. They know there's a lot of people there. And they knew they were coming during the time of prayers. They came specifically during the time of prayers because that's when they would have all the people to kill them all. When they came, they were confused because it was perfectly quiet. And in the Muslim services, it's loud when they pray. And it was very quiet. And they're like, wait, is someone here or not? And they waited for quite a while. And it was quiet, it was quiet, it was quiet. Again, no one home, so to speak. We're not going to waste our time going in here. Obviously, no one's here. And they left. What was going on? Well, 2 things were going on. One is, hand of God, they came exactly during the time of the Shemona Esrei Amidah, part of the services when you stand with your feet together and it's the quietest time of prayer when you're supposed to be praying in a whisper. But not only that, but the chazan, the one leading the services at that moment, happened to be a young man from France. Before Rosh Hashanah, meaning exactly 3 weeks before, He had gone to his spiritual guide. It's called the Chernobyl Rebbe in Bnei Brak, and he asked him for a blessing for the new year. 3 years before Rosh Hashanah was 3 weeks before, right before Rosh Hashanah. And his Rebbe, his spiritual guide, instructed him to pray with deeper focus and to double his time of the Shemona Esrei, to say that prayer with double the time. And when they looked at the security cameras, they realized because the chazan, because the cantor who was leading the services, this young man, Binyamin, was taking so long, and it was so quiet the whole time. That's why the terrorists thought no one was there. So it was just amazing. Again, they weren't praying, knowing there's terrorists coming. God, please help us. They didn't know at that moment. They weren't aware. They weren't praying an especially long Shemona Esrei Amidah service because they didn't know. But they were praying. They were praying for a long time. They were praying very devoutly. So this is an example where, again, it's not a conscious, focused, I'm reaching out to you, God, please respond. But they're reaching out, they're serving God, and God responded. And another incident that happened fairly recently, the person that shared the story I actually know his family, Harel, and he said his brother-in-law, Melchiel ben Yosef, is in the reserves in Gaza, and his brother-in-law's battalion, their group, were in an area that was cleared of the terrorists, bulldozed down, as I'm sure you've all seen the pictures. So we have no scary buildings where terrorists can be lurking. We have no terrorists on the ground. And they were given a break, a few minutes, very few minutes. They work very hard there with tremendous self-sacrifice. This is a religious soldier. He sees the sun's about to set, and he says, okay, I can pray the afternoon service. When he was praying, he turned toward Jerusalem. Why? Because that's what Jews do. If you're outside of Israel, we pray in the direction of Israel. So which direction do we pray? North, south, west, east? Well, it depends where you are. In America, we all pray to the east because that's Israel. If you were in Australia, you'd be praying northwest because that's Israel. So it's not the direction, it's toward Israel. Where do you pray in Israel? You're in Israel. Well, in Israel, you pray toward Jerusalem. And if you're in Jerusalem, you pray in the direction of the temple. The soldiers sat down, they all sat, they just happened to all sit, their back, so to speak, to Jerusalem. And this one religious soldier, he grabbed the moment and he said he's going to pray. Obviously, he was exhausted and his body was aching, and he would have also appreciated the few minutes rest because they probably weren't giving them too long to sit. The opportunity to pray, he's going to pray. And the sun's setting. If he doesn't do it now, then when? So he started praying, and he got to, as we're saying, the Shemona Esrei, the Amidah, where you stand with your feet together, and he was facing Jerusalem. And suddenly, he sees from under the ground a terrorist emerge with an RPG. Now, obviously, this is a life-threatening situation. He immediately shouted and pulled out his gun to shoot. And all of his comrades heard this, and they turned around, and they all saw what he was seeing, and they all shot and neutralized the terrorists, and they sent down bombs to the hole to destroy that as well, to the tunnel shaft. They couldn't believe it. If he hadn't been praying, if he, like the rest of them, was just sitting and they all happened, again, nobody was forcing them to sit in that direction, they all happened to sit with their back to this tunnel shaft, to this hole that the terrorists came out of before they even turned around. Who knows how many of them would have been, God forbid, killed. These soldiers were so moved that they all took upon themselves that the next day they committed, every single one of them would pray the afternoon service, thanking God for saving their lives. Again, when he stood up to pray, he wasn't doing it asking God for the miracle that would save them that moment. He was praying. But when we serve God, that's an arousal from below, and that initiates God's response. So who has seen this in their life? Who has seen this dynamic? Either consciously, you were consciously trying to create a miracle, and you reached out and you saw God's response, or you weren't consciously trying to create a miracle. You were just doing something of service of God, being the person you are, that you're trying to serve God. But the response you saw, you realized what you did elicited God's miraculous response. I'm sure we've all had these experiences. Who can think of something? I'm not letting people off the hook. I know this happens. I know we all have these experiences.
I was I'm a part of a group on WhatsApp. We're reading Tehillim 24/7 for Shalom for Israel. And at some point, somebody suggested to say Nishma Kol Hai for 40 days. So I joined the group, and I had also something personal. I was just waiting for a very special from someone special from a phone call, and I didn't hear. And while I was reading, contributing to the group, a thought came to me. I thought, oh, maybe I'll get what I want on after I read the 40 days, and it happened.
Wow. Wow.
I got a phone call that I was waiting for.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
But I like you saying, I wasn't praying specifically. I joined the group of women. We were all praying for.
Right. So this is this is so you could say this is sort of like in between. You were consciously reaching out from below to initiate a response from above. The point is you were altruistically reaching out to help world Jewry, to help the Jews in Israel, and God said, and you too. And you too. There's enough for everyone. Beautiful story. And I think it's also beautiful, that idea. It's actually, our sages say that when you are praying for someone else, well, they say specifically if it's a similar situation, they say if you're praying for someone else to be saved in an area that you yourself need salvation, God will send salvation to you first because of your prayers for other people. And actually, people do that today very consciously. And people will swap, we'll pray for each other, knowing how valuable that is to God, this prayer for someone else. Sometimes people do it specifically that have the same need, and sometimes just people do it that have needs. And I've seen miracles in both of these types of situations. Someone else would like to share a time when they consciously reached out to create a miracle and saw God's response, or when they weren't consciously trying to create a miracle, but they were doing things for God, and then they saw a miraculous response.
I have examples of both.
Great.
So the first one, like I take something upon myself to do for somebody else, right? Like to pray or do certain things, and it's not like one time. It's ongoing, right? So it's an ongoing situation. So what I noticed quite often, if I'm very good at doing what I took upon myself to do, then for whatever I'm doing it for, things are going well. And then I'm slacking off, and sure enough, there's something like remind me.
And you're saying not in the area of the reason why you took this thing on, just in general in your life, you see the improvement, you see the enhancement.
It's not my life. It's not in my life.
Right.
The example is not in my life. I'm doing something, let's say additional prayers to see something good in some other situation, right? Mm-hmm. And while I'm doing it, it's kind of like it's commitment. It's a daily commitment. So when I'm doing my daily commitment, things going well.
It works.
It seems this way, right? And then when not focused, and I miss, and I could miss a day or 2 days, and then I hear maybe not such a good news.
I think Chava is what we call, there's a phrase in Hebrew, it doesn't translate as well in English, but we'll call it accustomed to miracles. Meaning, I know Chava for years has been telling us of the miracles she's created. So some people just have more of a knack for it. What can we say? But I know Chava has many times taken on things for other people, as she's saying in this example, and she does her part and God responds. Have you had, you said, the other situation as well, where you weren't trying to per se create a miracle, but you just add,
Yeah. So another one, which to me, it's such an obvious miracle, just a gift from God. Totally. I didn't think about that. I'm in a kind of a peculiar situation that I have no idea how to figure it out. Sometimes you're in a situation and you don't know how to figure out, and at some point you just, please Hashem, figure it out. Mm-hmm. I can't. It's complicated.
I think we can all relate. Yeah, give it up, give it over to God.
So
Sorry, God, you got to deal with this one.
so yeah, so that was like that was the situation, and it's kind of like, so I needed like probably more than a month delay, right? So something somehow needs to be delayed for like a month and a half, and I had no idea what to do. And then things just started falling in place. There's one barrier, it cannot happen on the original day, and then another barrier, and then another barrier, and then something else, and just like things happen one after another, and it's
And you got your 6 weeks.
I got already my probably 6 weeks, so I'm like, I can't believe that. I just realized that, wow, Hashem, this is amazing. Like like when it's, when something is not going according to your plan, I don't think it right away, right? I'm just, oh wow, why is this? Or these people, they're not doing their job well, whatever, like they didn't know, they didn't send, they didn't whatever, right? So there's like a lot of things happened, kind of, that looks on the first like some mismanaged, certain things mismanaged. So but then after so many things,
You
it just
realize.
it just like, like it just dawned on me,
Yeah.
Hashem creates all of this, so I have like my
You
nice
have your time.
delay.
Exactly. You're like, what's going on? What's going on? Oh, this is God. Oh, thank you. Yes.
Yeah, that's like I just realized it yesterday. That's why it's like so fresh for me.
Oh, wow.
It's like, yeah, I was like, yesterday was writing my thank you note, and I'm like, Hashem, I have to write all the series of events, so you know that I didn't miss any of your like uh, acts of
Yes.
kindness.
I sometimes have that happen to me where something happens, and then because sometimes I like, so to speak, the final recipient of a number of events, and it's like, whoa, and I want to like review each step and celebrate and see God's beneficent, God's loving hand on each step to create the final product, what I needed, which again sometimes could be that I'm directly praying for it. And I've also had situations where I wasn't even spaced in. I wasn't even thinking about it. It was a need, but there's a lot of needs on the list. So it wasn't even something on my radar. But God responded. God responded to other good things and just took care. And in either situation, it's very precious when we feel that. When we feel God responding to our efforts to create the miracle, to our general efforts. A sense of God saying like, doing good. I appreciate it. I love you. I'm taking care of you. Don't worry. You're in good hands. And when you get that message, when that thing happens to you, and I am positive it's happened to every single one in the class. We had 2 representatives talk, but I am sure every single one of us could share also their own stories. And it's just like, it's a wonderful feeling to just bottle up and perfume yourself with when you need it, when you need to remember. I just recently reread not all, but recent miracles, just to remind myself. From my miracle doc, as I've advised many times, write them down, have a Word doc, have notes on your phone, have a journal, whatever works for you, write it down so you can just reread it and really immerse yourself in that space of feeling God's loving care and God's response to us. Something else that we see going on in Israel in so many different ways is our love for each other. Just a little vignette, but it really touched me. An Olympic champion gold medalist. I cannot pronounce his name. It's Ukrainian, so probably you guys can help me. Artem Dolgopiat or something like that. Whatever, it does not make such a difference. But he's an Olympic gold medalist. And he put his gold medal for an auction. He wants to sell it. It's worth approximately $100,000. He's strapped for cash. He wants to sell it to give the money for all the people displaced now because of what's going on in the South. there's still to this day approximately 250,000 people that are officially displaced, that are living in who knows what situations, don't have their jobs, their kids don't have their schools, living a very, very unnatural lives, and they can't get their lives back in order. They can't move back and keep going and fix their homes and start up their businesses in a very, very, very tenuous situation. And they've been that way since October 7th. It's actually interesting. Someone I know told me she was just in Israel. She went for Thanksgiving weekend, in and out. She went to speak there. And she went to the south. And she actually came to a settlement 7 kilometers from Gaza. 7 kilometers is just too far to get the government's protection. It's interesting. I did not know that rule. If you're 7 kilometers, you're too far, and whatever happens, it's not the government's, they're not picking up the bill. So I guess the hand of God, because they were 7 kilometers instead of 6 or 6.5, they were not directly attacked by the terrorists. There were a number of people from the festival that actually ran the 7 kilometers all the way to them and survived. Many people that miraculously escaped the festival ran to Kibbutz Be'eri or other ones that unfortunately then got abducted or murdered by the terrorists in those places. Those were not safe places. But people did run the 7 kilometers to this settlement, and they survived. But the houses were destroyed, many houses destroyed. So this woman I know was speaking to a woman who, her house is unlivable, has not been livable since October 7th, the windows, the walls, everything, but she has no money to put it back together, and the government's not paying. Her children have not had school since October 7th. So she's, again, living a no-person life, sleeping at other people and, scrounging around. And this woman said, and she's such a happy person. And she's so centered. And she's so living with God. And she so sees God's hand in everything. It's all good. It's very, very, very inspirational. So getting back, I am sorry. So this man who won the gold medal in the Olympics, he's selling his gold medal to get $100,000 to help these people.
Is he Jewish?
Yes, he's Jewish. He's originally from the Ukraine. He's Jewish. He lives in Israel, and he won the gold medal for floor gymnastics or something like that. I think he might have even won twice. I don't know. He won several international competitions. So here he's a, world champion with a medal to prove it. But he said, what's his medal worth if the people are hurting this way? And the people come first. The people come before a piece of metal, before a trophy, before that recognition. People's lives matter more. But I was so touched because, again, if you think of someone who's in such a professional sport and trains for years and reach the absolute pinnacle anyone in the world can reach in this sport, that piece of gold has a lot of meaning. It represents not only the few minutes of that win, but years and years and years that went into that. Probably not a person who's necessarily, so involved in social services or who knows. But yet he's saying, what's it worth? What's it worth if people are hurting? What's it worth? If I can do something to help people, that's much more important. And that was so touching. And I think it's so true for so many people doing so much, because we all have our boundaries and our conveniences and our must-haves. And sometimes you just put that all aside.
Few things in my life stood up very strongly, that probably how I became observant, when I truly saw that nothing could happen if it wasn't God's help to me. There was a time when my mother was very sick, and she was after stroke, not talking. She would probably comprehend because she was holding my hand, she was touching, she could have she probably had some intellect, but she was not able to talk. And so hard, and was other things in my life going on, very, very harsh. And I would get help from nowhere what I would expect. Like somebody would from this hospital would stop by and give me, I don't know, a certificate to go to have a cup of coffee in Starbucks. I would go outside. I'm thinking, oh, I don't have change to pay for my ticket parking. I see on the floor $1. Like, how often you would see $1? One time $10 I found on the parking lot. You know, this parking lot in the hospital where people going back and forth. Way I could express and could understand that there is Hashem who makes these all little things. Yes, I'm going through terrible life, but with this bad time, there were things which gave me smile, gave me strength to go tomorrow back to the hospital to help.
Rivka was saying, and that's absolutely true. And when we put out good, naturally what comes back to us is good. When we put out godliness, what comes back to us is God's beneficence. And that's 100% true. Yes. And we should all always see that. When you feel God's embrace, when you feel he's holding you, protecting you, taking care of you, there for you, of course, you feel so loved. You love. You feel so taken care of. You want to just give. You want to be with. It's just our natural response. So it's really wonderful to be in that space, and it's wonderful to be able to get back into that space just by writing it down so you can reread it, or reminding yourself of all those wonderful things we have personally experienced. We were discussing last week the war in Lebanon called Shalom HaGalil, Peace in the Galil, which is that area on the Israeli-Lebanese border in 1982. And we were discussing the words of the Lubavitcher Rebbe about this war during the war. The Rebbe said these words in July of 82. And I was bringing them in because they seem to be, I wouldn't even say mirroring, I would say pointedly telling us what we're supposed to be doing now in Gaza. And the Rebbe's main point thus far, as we said from last week, was we have to finish the job. And if we don't finish it, what was the point of all those soldiers that died until this point? Someone actually shared with me, this inspired me very much last week. She said, our soldiers in Israel are so focused, and they really are, and their spirits are so strong. More than the general population, the soldiers are totally committed because they know they're finishing the job. Because they know they're finishing the job, that's what's giving them backbone. That's what's giving them drive. That's what's giving them courage. That's what's giving them endurance. All these wonderful things we see with the soldiers specifically more than anyone else. They're the ones in the most dangerous position minute after minute, and they're the ones with the highest morale because they know they're finishing the job. And she connected it to us because all the Jewish people are God's soldiers. We became God's army when we left Egypt. We were called the army of God. That's when we became officially God's army. We've been God's soldiers 3,300 some years, but now we're finishing the job. God put us in this world, has an army to conquer the world and bring redemption. And when it doesn't seem like we're going to finish the job, morale is low. But we know we're finishing the job now. Just like the soldiers in Gaza, they know they're finishing the job. So our morale, our courage, our endurance can also be very, very, very high. So the Rebbe in this talk in 1982 is really focusing on the miracles God did then in Lebanon, just as now we see all these miracles in Gaza. And the fact that there are all these miracles in Lebanon and now in Gaza shows us that God wants us to finish the job. As we're taught, as Judaism says, in matters of security, follow the experts, follow the military. They're the experts in security. And this is what the military was saying in 82 and is saying now. The only way to guarantee security is to finish the job. They did not finish the job in Lebanon. If they did, we wouldn't have Hezbollah today with 150,000 terrorists. If they don't finish the job with Hamas, Hamas said publicly, we're going to do it again, and we're going to do it again, and we're going to do it again. You don't even have to be such an expert. The only way to guarantee security is to finish the job. We're very worthy. Every Jew is worthy of miracles. The soldiers then in 82 saw so many miracles on the field. The soldiers now in Gaza, there are so many miracles coming out every single day. Every Jew is worthy of miracles, and especially these soldiers. You can say, who are they? Why should they have all these miracles? These soldiers in Lebanon and now in Gaza are literally sacrificing their lives. Not a joke. It's lives. God has protected. But of course, there's been casualties, and there's about 3,000 soldiers that were really wounded in significant ways. 3,000, besides all the ones that lost their lives. What are they self-sacrificing for? To protect the Jews, to protect the land. I saw today a little clip of a group of soldiers that had just finished their stint in Gaza. And they were saying together the blessing we say, thanking God for his miraculous protection. The whole group, obviously some religious and many perhaps not, but they all very strongly said this blessing together because it's true. So dangerous. And every miracle story we hear just highlights the dangers all over. And that's why the army predicted such an enormous loss of life, which God has protected us from, because it's that dangerous. So every single soldier is there putting his life on the line to protect Jewish lives, to protect the Jewish land, to protect Jewish lives. And therefore, of course, every soldier is worthy, is by definition deserving that God should make miracles for them. Just like if someone dies, if someone is killed because they're a Jew, someone is a soldier defending Israel and killed, we're told they're considered martyrs. They go straight to the highest levels of the heavens above. It doesn't make a difference how they live. This is how they died. This is what they gave up their life for. So obviously every single soldier in the army of Israel in 82 in Lebanon, now in Gaza, is completely deserving, and God's making those miracles. They completely deserve them. And also, of course, we have to understand that it is miracles, meaning it could be a very slippery slope where people go in the direction of, oh, the IDF is the best army in the world and the American army couldn't do it, but we can do it because, we're the IDF. Those are very dangerous statements. No, it's not our strength. We're human. Our soldiers are human. Our generals are human. It's God. And God forbid, if we think it's our strength, it's so easy for God to say, all right, if it's all you, let it be all you, and then see what happens. We don't want to give God that message. It was after Entebbe, they came out with T-shirts, Kol HaKavod Tzahal, meaning like, good job, IDF. And that's a dangerous slogan. It's Kol HaKavod HaKadosh Baruch Hu, thank you, God, for Entebbe, which the Americans could not duplicate. Just as what we're doing in Gaza, the Americans couldn't do in Afghanistan and they couldn't do in Iraq, and we are doing it in Gaza because we're so superior, because God's protecting us every minute of the day. And we have to always remember that and never lose focus. The soldiers are self-sacrificing, and it's happening because of miracles. It's happening because of God.